much-awaited share float later this month. Game maker King plans to sell more than 15 million shares for between $21 and $24 each in New York. That price range values the UK-based company at up to $7.6 billion. King is one of many companies this year to opt for an IPO as they try to capitalize on an improved economic picture. Delano D'Souza has more.
King Digital Entertainment have hit a sweet spot with Candy Crush. They are set to list on the New York Stock Exchange in late March, a listing that could value the company just under $7.6 billion. The maker of the most downloaded app of 2013 won't be able to rely on the enormous success of Candy Crush forever. It will need to come up with new games to keep people hooked. While King's listing is creating a lot of buzz, it's far from alone to turn to the markets this year. Europe saw its biggest listing in January when Numéricab's majority owner Altice sold 1.8 billion euros in shares. Retailers in the UK have also jumped on board. The high street names Poundland and Pets at Home listed in London on Wednesday, raising over $1 billion. This trend to look to the markets could demonstrate a return in confidence. Money raised from European exchanges more than doubled in 2013, raking in over $36 billion. In London alone, the number of companies to list in 2013 versus 2012 went up by almost half. This includes Britain's Royal Mail, whose stock price has increased by as much as 82% since listing in October. 2014 has seen a strong start to the year for European IPOs. They've raised around $3 billion.
All right, this seems to be a good a time as any to take a look at the stock markets. In the United States this hour, we're seeing shares generally trading lower, the Nasdaq being the one outlier there, up 0.2% to this hour. Concerns of a slowdown in China and tensions over Ukraine are still seen to be weighing on shares, and the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 are in negative territory. It was a pretty similar picture in Europe at the close, with much the same concerns weighing on markets on this side of the Atlantic. The Frankfurt DAX took a real hit there on concerns once again about Ukraine and also about a slowdown in China. The DAX was down 1.3% at the close. The CAC 40 was down 1%. If we look at a few other stories that came through earlier this Wednesday, industrial production in the Eurozone fell 0.2% in January compared to December. The French figure was even weaker. We saw industrial production in this country falling 0.3% in January. Still, some analysts say that the data shows that the Eurozone's recovery is on track. Much of the drop is attributed to a fall in energy production, but manufacturing is still growing, and I suppose that is the silver lining of that story. And as you just heard while we were looking at the markets, there are a lot of market jitters when it comes to the situation in Ukraine. Speaking earlier, Germany's finance minister Wolfgang Schäuble tried to play down those risks. Speaking as he unveiled the German government's budget plans over the next few years, he said the financial fallout of the Ukraine crisis would be manageable.
We take the financial and economic risks from the serious situation in Ukraine, it's not just about Crimea, very seriously. But we believe the economic and financial effects are and will be manageable. I think that applies to Germany and to Europe overall.
Okay, we still have a few more stories to tell you about. We're not going to turn to Laura just yet. Let's talk through those stories then. Italy's Matteo Renzi has unveiled new economic reforms. He's trying to hit the ground running only weeks after becoming prime minister. Among the measures he announced earlier as he spoke in Italy is a reduction in payroll taxes to increase employment. He also pledged tax cuts for lower income families. And more importantly, he has pledged that there is enough money in Italian state coffers to pay for all of these reforms. Meanwhile, here in France, a court has banned the US company Hess Oil from doing oil exploration at a site near Paris. It's seen as a victory for opponents of the controversial fracking method, which uses chemicals and water at high pressure in the search for oil. Hess Oil had promised not to use this method, but the court ruled against it nonetheless. Local officials say it's tantamount to a ban on exploration in the entire Paris region. And the airline body IATA has cut its profit forecast for the international airline industry this year. IATA predicts total profits of $18.7 billion. That's $1 billion less than its forecast in December. It blames political tensions, including the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, for hiking oil prices. That, in turn, is likely to raise fuel bills for carriers, according to the airline body. Now it's Laura's turn for the sports news, I believe.
Yes, not a moment too soon, clearly. Thank you very much indeed, Marcus. We'll see you again.